through some complications and other things that I won't get into all the details, but Randy crashed, and he went into seizure activity, and he passed away. Then it was an absolute shock.
Thank you for joining us on Silently Bleeding. Our guest today is Jelly Valamont. And so thank you for joining us, Jelly.
You're welcome.
Jelly is an author, and she has just come out with her third book called Tapestry. And this came out in July?
It did.
Yeah. So Jelly, give us just a little synopsis about your book.
Okay. It was a book that my husband and I started, and we actually began the book about 3 weeks before he passed away.
Wow.
The story, though, is much longer than that. The story began when he was born. He was adopted, and for many years, everybody that found out he was adopted, well, do you know your birth family? No, I don't need to know my birth family. My adopted family is all I need. And so he went through life that way until our oldest daughter got very ill. And we began to wonder, we couldn't find out what was wrong with her, began to wonder, is there a genetic predisposition, this elusive disease? We knew my medical history, but did not know his. And that is a problem. Even today, a lot of times when children are adopted, there is no identifying information that's given to the parents of the adoptee. And so kids grow up and they don't know their genetic predispositions. And you know, Jan, a lot of those things do not show up until we are way into adulthood. And so Randy didn't know, and he began to wonder, okay, what do I need to know about my genetic makeup? And you know, genetics are a big thing. DNA is a big thing right now. And so we began to do some searches, and through process of events, we found out that Randy, who was always told he was Italian, found out that he was half German and half Iranian. And this was in 2001, right after the World Trade Centers were bombed. He did not want to be half Iranian until he met his birth family later in life and found out they are Muslim and they are wonderful people. But with him being a Pentecostal Assemblies of God pastor, this was a real difficult thing for him to try to navigate through, being, you know, his birth family is half of his birth family is Muslim, and then his heart is Assemblies of God, Pentecostal, Christian. And so this is just the story. But when we began to talk about what he kept feeling that there was more to the story, that he needed to know all of his life. There was more. And after he found both sides of his birth family, he realized that his goal was to share Christ with them. And so he wanted to share Christ, but he didn't just want his family to know about Christ. He wanted the world to know about Christ and wanted the world to know his story. And we found that that although Muslims, sometimes people talk about radical Muslims, his family was not radical. In fact, they're not practicing Muslims. They're born Muslims, and so they stay that way. So anyway, we just started this book, and through a process of events, Randy did not come home from the hospital, and I knew that I needed to finish this story because Randy always wanted people to know that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you've come from, it doesn't matter how badly you may have messed up your life, you can still know Christ and you can still be used by God. And that's the story of being used. Tapestry.
You want to get the book? I'll leave a link down below. It is a page turner. I'm not kidding. It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Jelly, you mentioned that Randy did not come home from the hospital.
Correct.
That was 3 years ago, as of yesterday.
As of yesterday,
wow.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about his story?
Yes.
And your story?
Yes. Needless to say, it was a real shock. Randy had gone in for a surgery. It was an elective surgery. Came home from the hospital, and when he came home from the hospital, everything looked good, but he was home for about 4 hours, and he became really, really, really sick again. Oh. So the next morning, we went back to the hospital, found out that the first surgery that he had, there was a kink in the intestine. And so they had to go back in and do a second surgery. And through some complications and other things that I won't get into all the details, but Randy crashed, and he went into seizure activity, and he passed away. Then it was an absolute shock. We had no idea that this could ever happen. We had no clue that anything like this was even a possibility, because this was a simple elective surgery, and there should have been no complications. The only thing that I can imagine is that there was something greater at work here, and I still don't know what it is. I don't have an answer, but it devastated our family. It devastated our church. Randy was the pastor of a church here in Griffin, and devastated our community and our movement, because there were so many things that Randy had his hands in. You know, he was a great fundraiser. And so he had made a lot of commitments to help different organizations raise funds, and left those organizations going, what do we do now? Our fundraiser's gone. And so it was a very difficult time. And I had one daughter that was living in Florida and two daughters that were living here. And over the last 3 years, Danielle and her husband, he's a doctor in Macon at the Navasant Hospital, they moved up from Fort Lauderdale to the Macon Forsyth area, and so now they're living here. And then my other daughter lives about 3 miles away, and then the baby of the family, who was always supposed to be with me, but for some reason she felt like she needed to leave. She moved to Indiana, and she's at Real Life Church now in Indiana, and just loves it, just dearly loves being a Yankee. So I have those 3 daughters, and about a year and a half before Randy passed away, my youngest sister also passed away, and I brought in 2 of her children to our home. So I had Reagan and Alden, who were living with us when Randy passed away, and the journey was difficult at best, but now I had 3 daughters who were fatherless, and I had 2 boys who were fatherless for the 3rd time. Wow. They had lost their father in 2014, their grandfather in 2016, and then Randy in 2019. So having to navigate through all that was difficult at best. But you know what I found is, we talk about, as people in ministry, we talk about, oh, God can give you peace. He will give you peace. But I never knew how much peace God could give until I needed it. And when I found out that I needed the peace of God in my life, He was there. And He has walked with me through this entire journey the last 3 years.
Wow. So, Jelly, I understand God giving you peace. I'm sure there were many tears. There's a lot of difficulties. But this was so unexpected. What would you tell women like me that if, God forbid, but something happened to my husband or to that precious woman of God that's watching right now, and not that we want to walk in fear, but what would you tell us? What words of wisdom would you share with us?
There's a lot, and I'll try to narrow it down to a few things. First of all, one of the things that Randy did years ago is that he had what is called a key man policy for the church, and all pastors, regardless of the size of your church, all pastors should have a key man insurance policy. So when Randy passed away, I told you that, it was difficult for us, but it was difficult for the church too. The leader was gone, and our church is Griffin First Assembly is a big facility, and at that time it had a school, it had a preschool, it had a high school, it had a daycare center, it had a counseling center, and so there's a lot of things that needed to be run monetarily. And so when Randy passed away, there was a large insurance policy that was paid to the church. And he had written the board had written into the policy that I would receive a percentage of that. So the percentage of that policy has kept me going for the last 3 years. And it also kept the church going. And it has been an absolute godsend, even though that's not the way that we wanted it to happen. So I would say, ladies, talk to your husbands about the key man insurance policy. And if he can get that policy and make the church the beneficiary of the policy, that would be good for the church. Because, we always think about the church. What would the church do? And so that would be, that's the first thing on my mind, is what what is the church going to do? Well, if they have this key man insurance policy, that will help the church get through the first few months and even maybe years of what can happen after they lose their leader. The second thing I would say is what we always tell people. If you've counseled anybody who has ever been in a situation like this, is don't make a life-changing decision for the first year. If you've never walked through it, you do not understand. Your brain is in an absolute fog, and you can't think, you can't make good decisions, even though you may think it's the right decision. Don't make a decision. I talked with all of our girls after about 3 weeks after Randy died. I said, okay, here's the rule. No decisions for the next year. You don't make a decision on buying a house. You don't make a decision on leaving the church. You don't make a decision on, what you're going to do in life. You don't make any major life-changing decisions for the first year. And I would tell all ladies who find themselves in widowhood, do not make life-changing decisions. And by all means, don't date the first year, okay? That's how people get into real big trouble.
Yeah.
Is dating when they're emotionally shot and they make bad decisions.
Right.
I could sit here all day and tell you horror stories of women that I have seen walk through this. Another thing I would tell you is don't trust anybody. Isn't that awful? Isn't it awful? Don't trust, especially those who say, here I am, I can help you, let me give you some financial advice. Don't trust them. And just because your husband trusted them does not mean you need to trust them. You need to find someone that is totally and completely removed from your life that can help you walk through financial decisions or, emotional, mental investments, whatever you can find. Don't trust them, and be sure, the Bible says that there's wisdom in the counsel of advisors. And be sure you get advisors. Be sure you don't just ask one person and depend on them to give you the right answer. I'll tell you one quick story. I had a man show up at Randy's funeral, and he told me that we needed to that Randy had an annuity, and he needed to make these decisions, or we needed to change the ownership of the annuity before the end of the year. We had to do it before the end of the year. Now, Randy died at the end of October. His funeral was the 6th of November. So I'm thinking, I've got 6 weeks to do this. So I said, well, come back. He lived in another state. I said, come back. We'll I'll sign the paperwork, whatever I need to do. And he said, well, he said, yeah, I'll be back. He comes back. I signed the paperwork. I find out that he has taken this annuity and he has changed it to another annuity. And when I found out that he had changed it to another annuity, which is illegal, okay, this is called twisting and churning, and it's illegal to do this. And he made it so that I could not touch any of my retirement for 16 years.
Wow.
16 years. I'm not a young woman, okay? I'm younger than I'm older than some people think, and I'm younger than, or I'm much older than I used to be. But when Randy passed away, I was 61 years old, or 60 years old. And that meant that I could not touch my retirement until I was 76.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And it was crazy. So anyway, I trusted him because Randy had trusted him. And then through a process of events, I found out that he was not even licensed to do this in the state of Georgia, which is where I live. He was not licensed. And because of that, I was able to file a complaint with the Georgia Insurance Commissioner's Office and got all my money back and put it into a different, now that's a success story. And it was the Lord that did that. It was not me, it was, but it was the stress for 7 months after Randy died, the stress of knowing that he had tied my money up. And he didn't get just the commission when he sold the annuity to Randy. He got the commission when he sold the annuity to me. So he got double commission off of this. So that's what I mean. Don't trust people, that, especially if they come to you and say, oh, you can trust me. Don't trust them. So I would be very cautious about that. And Jan and you and I talked about this. Those first 3 things that I mentioned are very important. but for your well-being, for your financial and your emotional well-being. But one of the things that I found through a group that I'm in also, another widows group, was, and I didn't know this and I didn't understand, but do you know that women who go into widowhood, 75% of their friends base changes. 75%. You think about that. You think you have 100 friends that will walk you through this widowhood, and all of a sudden you look around and they're gone.
Wow.
And you only have 25 friends. Bring that down to another level. You've got 10 close friends. You really only have 2. So, or 2.5. But, and it's not because people don't care. It's not because they don't like you, or they don't love you, or they don't respect the position that your husband held. It's because more than likely you did things as a couple.
Yeah.
And now there's no couple. Nobody wants to feel like the fifth wheel. Nobody wants to be the odd man out, or everywhere you go, there's tables for 6, there's tables for 4. Oh no, we have 7 today. Can we pull in another chair? Or can we have 3? Can we pull in another chair? So it's very difficult. Even sometimes with us we have a staff, and I they didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
They didn't. So you know what they did?
Said nothing.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought back over that myself. Have I done that? Have I not known what to say? So I've just said nothing. And so it wasn't nothing wrong with people not knowing what to say. But if you're a widow, you may have experienced some of these things already. There's a lot more that I can get into later, but those are the things that are very, very important, especially if you're new on your journey. Knowing that even though you may have lost your friends base, there are other ladies out there who are needing you and who are needing to help you or wanting to help you. There have been so many people that have reached out to me. The staff at Griffin First Assembly has been absolutely phenomenal, even though there have been some that they just didn't know what to say, and so they some of my friends in the church, they didn't know what to say. So and you don't ever want to be looked at as being the pity person.
Yeah.
You don't ever want that. So there's a lot that you will learn on your journey into being a widow if you ever have to face that. But those are things that are very important to start with. Don't make a decision for the first year. Be careful who your advisors are. Know that things are going to change. They can't not change. They will change, and have talk to your husband and your board about doing that key man policy, because that has been an absolute godsend.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Jelly, funny story. I lost my parents less than 2 years ago, 5 days apart.
Right.
And my first Sunday back to church, and this man is a precious man of God, but he walks up to me and he goes, "So you're an orphan like me?"
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
And it's like people don't know what to say, and sometimes they're trying to say something encouraging.
So they say the wrong thing.
They say the wrong thing.
Yes.
But Jelly, just let's end with this. What would you say to pastors' wives that are watching this, that somebody in their church loses a spouse, they lose their parent, they lose a child? You don't know what to say.
No.
My thought is, at least I can just say, "Hey, I don't know what to say. I'm here for you. I love you." But is there anything we can say?
There's no magic trick. There's no magic words that you can say. Everybody has a love language. We've talked about love languages for years, and I think that that we all think that we need to say something, and we do need to say something, but there's also things that you can do. One of the things that touched my heart the most, probably, and my daughters have, and the boys have also talked about this so many times. We had 3 people that after Randy passed away, we had an autopsy done, and so there was like, between the day he died and the day we were able to have his funeral, there was like 7 days. And so there was 7 days of lull, but there were 3 women who came to my house every single morning, and they would come in the door, they'd ring the doorbell, I would be in the bed, one of the girls would open the door, and they would say, "We're here to fix coffee."
Oh.
And they would just come in and they would fix coffee, they'd unload the dishwasher, they would, sweep the floor, and they didn't care that I was in my jammies and had on no bra. They didn't care. They didn't take pictures either, because hopefully they didn't. But they came and they ministered to my family.
Yeah.
And then about 2 weeks after Randy passed away, the girls got up that one morning and they looked around. They said, "Where's Monifa?"
Oh.
And I said, "Monifa doesn't live here. She has her own family." So those were things, and and there were people. The church provided meals for. I don't know how long they brought meals, but they would bring a meal every day. We had lots and lots of family here, and lots of people coming in and out of the house. Some people, they would just show up at the door and say, "Here's some paper plates."
Oh, wow.
Here's some paper cups. I don't know if you need any ice, but here's a bag of ice. So it was the little things. It was important for people to say, "I'm so sorry," but it was also important for people to show up. And they didn't expect me to sit and talk with them and go through all of the nitty-gritty details and relive everything. They just ministered to my family. They were truly the Marys and Marthas. And so if you're walking someone through the difficulty of loss, do tell them you're sorry. And if you don't know what to say, and give them an opportunity to talk if they want to talk, but don't expect it unless they open the door. Because a lot of times people just, reliving the trauma is more difficult. Other people reliving the trauma is almost like therapy. And so be sensitive to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will tell you what to say. He'll give you the words to reach out to that person, and be there. Just be there if you can.
The ministry of presence.
It is. And presence is 2 words: PRESENCE and PRESENTS. And those are very, very important words. If it's nothing more than, here's a Starbucks gift card.
Yeah.
Go get you a cup of coffee when you can't do anything else, or get you a cup of chai. I don't drink coffee. So those are very important things.
Jelly, when my parents passed away, one of the ladies in Silently Bleeding, one of the pastor's wives, reached out to me and said, "Can I have Uber deliver food to you?"
Wow.
And that touched my heart. I told her how much I appreciated it, because where my parents where they were living when they passed away was where my sister and her family were at church, and their church just blessed beyond with food.
Amazing.
It was incredible. So we didn't need it, but just the thought just was so precious to me.
And it's important to allow people to do that, because it helps them help you. And if there were times that I didn't know what I was going to do with all the food in my house. And I actually packed it up and sent it to our Teen Challenge. Sometimes I would send it to our Teen Challenge Center. And because I had too much, and then I looked around one day and realized the food had stopped, and I was going to have to start cooking again. I guess I better go to the grocery store. Somebody needs to eat. So it's if you allow people, and people will reach out to you. Hopefully they will reach out. And that's so kind for people to offer Uber to you. And you can offer Uber to me. I'll give you my address.
Phone number, whatever.
Yeah.
One thing that I've learned is when someone is going through loss is when you say, "If you need anything, call me." Would you have ever called?
No, I would have never called. In fact, I had a couple of issues with the house after Randy passed away, and I didn't know who to call.
Yeah.
I didn't know who to call, and I would call people and say, "Can you give me a recommendation, and sometimes I got a recommendation, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I had the wrong person come in, and that's another whole line of stories, but I won't get into that. But it's sometimes it's trial and error. But ask, if you tell somebody, call me if you need me, call them back and say, hey, look, I'm just here, and I just want you to know I meant what I said. If you need me for anything, if you need somebody to come and sweep your floor, I'll sweep your floor. If you need somebody to, fix a clogged toilet or a clogged sink, I know how to do that. I can do that for you. And it's very important that people know that you mean what you said.
Right.
We had a lady in our church that whose husband passed away unexpectedly. Young woman, she was not 30, and so I reached out to her and said, if you need me, call me. But then because I had already walked through this, I was able to message her again and again and again and say, I'm still here. If you need me, call me. If you want to talk, call me. If you want to meet for coffee, call me. And that's so important, Jan. It's so important to reach out again and again, because people have the idea that you really didn't mean it.
Yeah. And I like that of giving specifics. Hey, I can run to the grocery store for you. I can do your laundry.
Yes.
Because I know when I was going through grief with my parents, I would not have called you, Jelly, and said, hey, Jelly, can you do the laundry? I would have never.
No. And I would have said, what do we do with this?
But when someone reaches out and
Yes.
says, what can I do? Can I do this?
Yes.
That lets you know how serious they are.
Yes, it does. It does.
So it's helpful.
Yeah, it is helpful, and it's a journey. It's not a fun journey.
Yeah.
But it is a journey, and if you refuse to walk the journey, you don't get any further. And so you have to walk through the journey that the Lord has put before you. That's so important. Don't get stuck. You can sit down and you can grieve and you can, remember the good times, remember the bad times, but don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck in your journey. There's not anything good for you there.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
I want to tell you, ladies, Jelly is now over our group called Silently Bleeding, Hope for the Pastor's Widow.
Yes.
So if you are a pastor's widow or you know a pastor's widow,
Yes.
send them to this group. It's going to be a group for encouragement,
Yes.
prayer, and share. And so you're going to want to be part of that if you are a pastor's widow or evangelist or missionary's widow. So thank you for joining us
Yes,
today. Thank you, Jelly.
You're welcome.
And
You're
we'll
welcome.
see you on the next video. God bless.
Thank you for watching Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. I look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to leave me comments down below and make sure and subscribe. If you want to know every time a new video is coming out, hit the bell. I would be so delighted if you would also hit the like button, and feel free to share this video with anyone you know that this would encourage. Blessings, my friend.